Good afternoon and welcome to today's coronavirus press briefing. I'm Caroline James, in for Donna Bush. Welcome to our viewers on CIGTV, YouTube, Facebook, and of course our listeners on Radio Cayman. This afternoon's prayer comes from Pastor David Woods.
We come to you today because you are God, you are good, you are in control, and you love us. Our world is in turmoil. Quietly and invisibly, this virus has spread. We find it necessary to isolate ourselves from one another. Yet you created us as social beings. You even said it was not good for us to be alone. We realize that this disease, like all others, is ultimately a result of sin's presence in the world. Sin separates us from you and from one another. Yet you made a way back through your Son, Jesus Christ. Isaiah 53:5, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Father, thank you for the grace that you give us so that we might be forgiven our sins and find peace with all. While we must necessarily be socially distant from one another right now, may we use this time to seek restoration with you and reconciliation with others. We pray, Father, for our leaders in the Cayman Islands government today. Give them wisdom to chart the best course for these isles. Give them grace for the tremendous stress they must feel. Give peace to their souls as they look in faith to you. Whom have I in heaven but thee, the psalmist wrote. There is none upon earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. We entrust ourselves to you and pray all of this in Jesus' matchless name. Amen.
We have our panel with us again today. We have His Excellency the Governor, the Honourable Premier, the Honourable Minister for Health, and standing by we also have the Chief Medical Officer and the Commissioner for Police. Welcome again to our sign language interpreter, Miss Carolyn Powell. At Government, we're continuing to practice social distancing, so members of the media are joining us again today via Zoom. Welcome to them, and we turn first of all to Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon. We have 46 results for today. 27 of these are from the government facility, and all of the people tested there were negative for COVID-19 disease. There are 19 other results from the general public, of which 6 are positive. One of these is in Cayman Brac, and the other 5 are on Grand Cayman. Of all of them, 4 of them are related to either immediately related to somebody who traveled. In other words, they've had contact with somebody who's traveled or traveled themselves. One is related to a previous, somebody who's previously positive, or previously reported as positive, and one person has no travel history. That's it for the results for today.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Any questions from members of the media for Dr. Lee, first of all? We turn to CIGTV's Donna Bush. Donna, your question.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Lee, does this now how concerning is it rather, that one additional person now has no travel history or any link to anyone who's traveled?
I'm continued to remain very concerned about the fact that there are considerable numbers of cases that we continue to see. When somebody doesn't have a travel history, that's clearly of even more concern. But in addition, we're seeing quite a bit of transmission within some of the contacts. So the whole pattern continues to give me cause for concern, which continues to reiterate the strong message that was coming out from us to please isolate yourself as much as you can, because that is the way to try to prevent the spread of this.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee.
Cayman News Service had a question as well. CNS, you're up.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm not sure whether Dr. Lee will be in a position to say this, but is it possible for him to say the case on the BRAC was that travel contact with somebody who travelled, or a complete mystery as to where they got it? I wondered whether he would possibly be prepared to say that, given it's their first case.
Contact with somebody that had travelled.
Okay, I've got a second question, if I may, or do you want me to pass to someone else, Caroline?
No, Wendy, go ahead with your second question.
Okay, this is regarding the testing kits, because obviously now it's even more important. When we get the 1,700 on Tuesday, does Dr. Lee have any policies in place yet about who will be the first people testing? Presumably healthcare workers, that kind of thing. But if you could give us an outline of what he hopes to do with that first 1,700 that will arrive on Tuesday.
I need to let you know, Wendy, that that's not the only rate limiting step. We also have other parts of the step where we are limited. So although 1,700 is the ability for our reagents, we're also waiting on supplies of the swabs that we take the samples with, and we currently have a limited supply of those. So that's currently the rate limiting step. Every time we seem to succeed with stocks in some area, we're still being challenged with stocks in another. Because of that reason, it means that we can't really begin to do wider testing. And we've got a number of orders out there, if we had virtually limitless, we would really start to expand out the testing, and we intend to test frontline people such as healthcare workers, people who work in older age homes, the police, social workers, supermarket workers, everybody who's got a lot of contact with the public. And that we can only begin to do that when we actually have the supplies to do it.
Can I just follow up on you pointed particularly to swabs. Do you have an arrival date for those or a delivery of those?
We're expecting some more to arrive on the British Airways flight, but it's only a small number. It's, I think, about 170 we're anticipating. Orders are out all the time, and some of the orders that are coming in have been placed several weeks ago, but they appear, not out of the blue, but when we had thought that they weren't going to appear. We have another contact where we might be able to source considerable quantities. I mean, the same sorts of quantities that we were talking about, the South Korean reagents, but these are still relatively vague and not hard enough to give a more solid report on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Wendy. Cayman Compass, Kayla.
Hi, I have two questions regarding medical issues. In the BRAC, with the first case confirmed there, I imagine that BRACers will start to feel some of the same stress and panic that we've been living in Grand Cayman. Does the messaging to them change? What should we be telling them right now so that they don't maybe make some of the mistakes we were making over here in terms of crowding grocery stores and shops?
I haven't got a report from the BRAC, so I cannot say exactly what they're doing. I'm anticipating they're doing what we're doing on Grand Cayman, but I don't have a detailed report for you on that matter. But I would just reiterate, as we have been reiterating, to keep up that, to cut your journeys down to only absolutely essential journeys, which should only be to get stores. And if you can and if you're a vulnerable person, if you can get somebody else to get them for you, all the better. And to keep that social distancing and the hand washing and the respiratory etiquette.
Okay. And I have one other health question regarding mental health. We've received some comments about concerns about billing for mental health services, how much is allotted, how much is permitted for teleconferencing. So I wanted to hear if there is any conversation going on in insurance companies to help expand mental health access right now, and how the utilization of the mental health hotline has been.
I would have to ask the Health Service Authority for advice about the utilization of the hotline. We have been trying to open up telemedicine right across the board. There's been a lot of work between the Ministry of Health through the Acting Chief Officer, as well as the Health Insurance Commission and all of the health insurers. I don't know specifically about mental health within that subset. I know that the mental health line has been quite actively used. It's very possible Minister may have more information than me on that topic. But I'll make inquiries about whether there's any ability to improve access to that and get back to you on that matter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. We'll turn now to Kimanian Times. Ralph, your question, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lee. You mentioned that most of those cases, if not all, were related to someone who have tested positive before. Can you say if those new cases were they quarantined with the individuals who had it before?
Not today. I don't believe so today. Of the people that I reported, clearly the one on Cayman Brac was not related to anybody from previously. There's somebody with no travel history and was not related to any other case. There were 3 others who, again, were not related to any other case, but they had travel histories of their own. There was only one person today who was related to a previous case, but I don't think, as far as I'm aware, was not a household connection. It was a different sort of a connection.
Thank you.
And I think that only goes to show, because it was not a household connection, how these things can travel. So please keep yourself isolated as much as you can.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We'll ask Dr. Lee if you wouldn't mind just staying around just in case there's more questions later on, but we'll turn next to Commissioner Byrne for his update.
Good afternoon. No policing issues of a significant nature occurred over the past 24 hours. The crime situation remains stable, and there is continued full compliance with the hard curfew nightly between the hours of 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. No issues last night on Little Cayman. In Cayman Brac, 8 vehicles were intercepted by police. No breaches of curfew detected. All drivers were exempted as essential services personnel. Grand Cayman overnight, 132 vehicles intercepted by police. No breaches of curfew detected. Vehicles intercepted were approved essential services personnel, largely including food delivery services. One pedal cyclist was detected moving around in breach of curfew and was warned for prosecution. One person was arrested for an offence of indecent exposure and possession of an offensive weapon, and also breach of curfew. This morning, looking at our roads across Grand Cayman, traffic is busy, but moving well. Police checkpoints remain in place at strategic locations, supported by mobile patrols and the police helicopter. Business at supermarkets, pharmacies and gas stations is brisk, but is being well managed and well controlled. Social distancing protocols are being followed. There is a fair amount of activity on the beaches, with persons out walking, and the helicopter has reported no large congregations, with persons moving around adhering to social distancing protocols. Our helicopter and marine units continue to be deployed on extended tours to monitor activities in the water and across the islands. Since 6 a.m. this morning, 2 persons have been found in breach of soft curfew. At 8:30 a.m. this morning, a driver attempted to evade police interception and sped from the scene. After a short pursuit, the driver abandoned the vehicle and ran. He was caught and has been warned for prosecution for breach of curfew and a number of Road Traffic Act offences. And then at 10:18 a.m. this morning, a person was found engaged in commercial landscaping activities in breach of soft curfew regulations. That person has been warned for prosecution. If I could just deal with some special arrangements for the hard curfew tomorrow and maybe run through what was discussed yesterday. A reminder that we return to hard curfew at 7 p.m. this evening, and the hard curfew remains in place constant throughout tomorrow, Sunday, and remains in place until 5 a.m. on Monday morning, the 6th of April 2020. This means a full lockdown curfew from this evening until 5 a.m. on Monday morning, when the soft curfew comes back into play. Tomorrow, Sunday, the 5th of April 2020, exempted restaurant service providers will be permitted to engage in food delivery services between the hours of 12 midday and 9 p.m. This exemption permits approved delivery services only to operate across the islands. There is no exemption for food collection or drive-through restaurants. And to assist police officers in their task, I ask that all drivers engaged in food delivery services have all of the required exemption and approval documents ready for inspection by police who will be conducting static and mobile interceptions across the islands. There are no other exemptions to the hard curfew tomorrow. During the hard curfew, all persons should remain indoor and at home. I remind persons of the penalties for breach of hard curfew, which are a fine not exceeding 3,000 Cayman dollars and a term of imprisonment not exceeding 1 year or indeed to both. Please stay at home during the hard curfew, and I thank the community for the continued cooperation during this challenging period.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the Compass had a question first of all for the Commissioner. Kayla, go ahead.
Hi, Commissioner. I just want to clarify a couple of points. First off, about the curfew measures. People are asking for clarification about when they're allowed to exercise, if that includes swimming in the ocean, and what hours that is permitted.
So we have to break that up. Thank you for the question. We have to break that up into two issues. During the hard curfew, no activities of any type, no exercising, no outdoor activities. And that is the hard curfew that remains in place from 12:01 a.m. tomorrow morning until 12 midnight tomorrow night. But the soft curfew then, during those hours, exercise is permitted for a period of 90 minutes during the period of the soft curfew.
Is that from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
So the soft curfew then is in place from 7 p.m. at night until 5 a.m. in the morning. And the hard curfew comes into place at 7 p.m. each evening until 5 a.m. in the morning.
Okay. And I wanted to clarify if swimming is permitted. I understand that snorkelers today were told to get out of the water. And so I just want to clear that up for people.
So we're having lots of difficulties with interpretation around that. We're saying no marine activity, and people are challenging, saying that it is exercise. As I understand the exemption and the way we're enforcing it, no marine activity, no activities in the water.
Okay. Thank you for that. I also wanted to clarify on the first person who was prosecuted for curfew violation who received 4 months. Does that 4-month sentence, is it solely for a hard curfew violation, or are there other charges wrapped up in that?
No, that applies solely to the breach of hard curfew. The 4-month imprisonment is for the breach of hard curfew.
Okay. And now I understand that in the past, North Ward and other prison facilities have been at full capacity. Is that still a concern? Is there space to jail people for curfew violations and still maintain public health?
Yes, so the answer to that, yes, there is space in Northwood Prison, HMP Northwood, and I am in constant contact with the Director of Prisons, and we sit together on the NEOC Operations Board. So we're in constant communication in terms of requirements for prison. We also have the custody detention facility, which can deal with any overflow that might be required.
Okay. And there will be enough space to ensure that distancing guidelines are kept and there's not a risk of infection among the prison population?
Indeed, we're all very cognizant of the social distancing requirements, yes.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Kayla. Radio Cayman, Dion, I believe you had a question for the Commissioner.
Yes, I do. Commissioner, good afternoon. Even though there may be a few homeless people here on island, can you let us know what is being done for them during this current situation, especially during hard curfew hours?
So the Needs Assessment Unit have kicked in at the very start of the process and are assisting where they can. And as I said, we're doing what we can to assist homeless persons. Early on in the curfew process, we came across some homeless persons. They were reported through the NEOC channels, and people were provided with temporary accommodation to assist during this emergency period.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dion. Wendy at CNS, your question, please.
Yes, please. I have a question for the Commissioner. It's just really a little bit of clarity. He said just a moment ago, for the hard curfew, people should be in their homes, indoors. And we've had a few queries about people saying that the police have sort of come across them, you know, in their yard, in their own gardens, yards, you know, outside area that's within their home confines, like maybe trimming their own trees or whatever. And they've been asked to stop and go inside. So can we just get some clarity on this issue of, are people allowed to be in their yard in either soft or hard curfew, and how the police stand on that? Thank you.
Okay, Wendy, thank you. It's one of those difficult questions. Maybe I'm overstretching or overreaching in it. Yes, you are allowed to be in your own yard. I think that has been clarified on a number of occasions. I most likely did say indoor, and that would be obviously the preferred option, but you can move around within your own private grounds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Donna, your question next, please.
Sorry, guys. Wendy just got asked the question that many people were asking me as well, so I'm good. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Donna. I think we had one more from Caymanian Times before we let the Commissioner go. Ralph.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner. I have two questions, and the first is, can you explain to me what was the reason for recommending a hard curfew on a Sunday?
Because the supermarkets, pharmacies and gas stations will be closed, and there's no requirement for people to move around. You'll be aware of the facility or the exemption that was provided during the week from A to K and L to Z for the persons needing to shop Monday to Saturday. There's no requirement on a Sunday, and it gives us an opportunity to take back control of the situation that we're in at the moment, in the emergency situation that we're in at the minute.
Good. Thank you very much. The second question, next weekend is Easter weekend, and has been a Good Friday and Monday observed. The current arrangements are for individuals with the last names of A to K to do their business on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, next weekend they'll be shortchanged because some people, after them use the Wednesday, will not be able to go to the bank until the following Wednesday. Are there any things in place to deal with this situation?
I think the best way of answering that, Ralph, is we look at that, I suppose, as we go through the week, and we'll put whatever arrangements are required in place. It's something that will be addressed before it occurs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, media. We'll again ask the Commissioner not to go too far away while we turn next to the Premier for his update, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Start with the customary report on the world stats. The total number of cases the world over is now at 1,182,827, up 66,184 overnight. The total deaths globally are 63,924, up 4,754 overnight. The USA, 301,147 cases, up 23,986 overnight. Total deaths, 8,173, up 769 overnight. Spain, 124,736 cases, up 5,537 overnight. Total deaths, 11,744, up 546 overnight. Italy, 124,632, up 4,805 overnight. Total deaths, 15,362, up 681 overnight. France, 89,953, up 7,788 overnight. Total deaths, now at 7,560, up 1,053 overnight. China, 81,639, up 19 cases overnight. Total deaths, 3,326, up just 4 overnight. The United Kingdom, 41,903 cases, up 3,735 overnight. Total deaths, 4,313, up 708 overnight. Canada, still at only 13,860 cases, up 1,485 overnight. 228 deaths, up 20 overnight. The Philippines, 3,094 cases, 76 new cases overnight, 144 deaths, up 8 overnight. India, 3,082 cases reported, up 23 overnight. Total deaths, 86. Jamaica, 53 cases, total deaths, 3. And New York State, 113,704, up 10,228 overnight. Total deaths, 3,565, up 347 overnight. Anguilla is still at 3 cases, Bermuda at 35, British Virgin Islands at 3, Montserrat at 6, Turks and Caicos at 5. No deaths in any of the other overseas territories, or British overseas territories, at least in the Caribbean. I don't have a report for Gibraltar. I'll ask His Excellency if he does to do so. So the situation globally continues to be very grim, and in Cayman, the situation grows more worrying every day. As we've said a number of times now, we are into community transmission, and while the vast majority of the cases we are able to trace the contacts and the sources, there is at least one now that we, so far, don't know how that was acquired. This just underlines the point that we've made over and often, that we really must practice the basic principles which seem to reduce the possibility of contracting the disease. The first is physical distancing. Stay away from other people. Wash your hands at every possible opportunity. Those are the two most important things that anyone can do to avoid contracting this disease, and we urge everyone to do so. The measures that we have put in place, hardening some aspects of the soft curfew, and the hard curfew imposed tomorrow, Sunday, and the following weekend, are all aimed at reducing the opportunities for interaction between people. Yes, Ralph and others, there will be inconveniences. The system is not perfect. We have to deal with the situations as they present themselves. Good Friday, traditionally in Cayman, as long as I can remember, Christmas Day and Good Friday were always lockdown days, in the sense that nothing was open. No supermarkets, no gas stations, no banks, no businesses. Yes, people were free to roam about, and so that restriction is relatively new. But the lack of access to businesses on Good Friday has always been the case. I understand the supermarkets will open on Easter Monday, as many of them do, or have done in the past, and we hope that people will be able to make sufficient arrangements that no one goes hungry over that weekend. But that's next weekend, not this weekend. We still believe that it is possible to contain this, to avoid the widespread community transmission of the virus. The situation in Cayman Brac is hugely worrying. We've worried about that from the very start. Given the average age of the population there, and the fact that Cayman Brackers seem to live longer than people in Grand Cayman, I think that's because life is so much quieter and less stressful. But for whatever reason, if this virus gets loose in Cayman Brac, I'm afraid there are going to be many, many funerals. So I urge everyone, as I and everybody else continues to do, to please respect the measures that we are putting in place for the good of the community. Please cooperate. Please practice proper hygiene, social distancing, and let us continue to do everything we can to keep this virus from truly taking hold in this community.
Your Excellency.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to start by just reaffirming everything that the Premier has just said. We are trying to stop this virus getting loose, and all the measures we've taken have that objective. So all of us have an individual responsibility to play their role. Please do stay at home, and just if you are going out, think, is it absolutely essential? Because at this time, staying home does save lives. I just want to make a reference to the question of swabs, which has just come up. I think perhaps the Chief Medical Officer may not have the information that I was given just before I arrived, which is that we do have an order of 1,000 swabs confirmed and coming to the islands in the next couple of days. So we will be able to continue with testing, and we are planning to ramp testing up, starting with our healthcare professionals and people on the front line, emergency officers. It is the case that globally, getting any of these supplies remains incredibly difficult and challenging, and all countries are in this situation, and it's going to continue. But we will do our utmost to make sure that we have the supplies coming in, and I pay tribute to a huge amount of work going on behind the scenes to achieve that. Just a quick word on the British Airways flight. So everything is now in place for the incoming flight and the people coming off that flight going into the supervised government facility in isolation, and the outgoing flight and the people going back to London. I just want to say that we've had some queries from people saying, well, how can I get to the airport because my surname doesn't begin with the correct letter? So we will, of course, be flexible, and the police will be flexible for people going to the airport, provided they've got their sort of identity and sort of flight information with them. We've done a lot of work through the travel hotline to try and understand who on the islands would like to leave in the near future, and the London flight not being suitable for them. And we are clear that there are a number of people who want to go to the US, who want to go to Canada. There are people who want to go to India, the Philippines and Jamaica, and we may be able to use another London flight to arrange that. So obviously will depend on other governments if we can send aircraft to, for example, US, Canada. So we will use the Foreign Office's diplomatic network to help us on that. But please continue to send your details into the travel hotline if you do wish to leave the islands in the near future and are currently unable to do so. I want today to make a big shout out to the students at the isolation centre. They're coming to the end, and we have asked them at the last minute, and I apologise for that, to undertake testing. But I think that is really important to reassure their families when they leave the isolation centre, and to reassure the community that we've done absolutely everything to manage the risk. And I think the students have been fantastic and showed incredible responsibility and maturity in helping us protect our community, and we are very grateful to them. And I do want to thank the isolation unit team, who have also done a wonderful job. I also finally want to say a huge thank you to Deputy Governor and his Chief Officer team. There is an enormous amount of work going on behind the scenes, and I think the civil service has really stepped up in an impressive way in recent weeks. So to Eric Bush, Sam Rose, Wes Howell, Gloria McField Nixon, Satonia Cacho, Teresa Eshanique, Nellie Pucci, Jennifer Ahern, Dax Baseo, Kenneth Jefferson, and anyone I have not mentioned, a huge thank you to all of you for everything that you are doing. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Caroline. Good afternoon, everyone. Grand Kiman, Kiman Brock, and Little Kiman. The word for today comes from Isaiah 26:20. Come, my people, enter your chambers and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until the fury has passed by. I want to give a shout out to many of the volunteers at the hotel where the students are being housed. You did a magnificent job. Also want to give a shout out to all those people who are staying at home and only doing what is essential. You have grasped that the disease is no good without you. Today's translation will come from Hungary and Germany. And I'll try to do my best in translating, trying to communicate with persons who stay home unless it's essential. I'm hungry. It's Maraj Othang Kaimal Segetek. In German, it's verlassen sie a su Hause, nur wenn es unbedingt notwendig ist. Today, I also want to share my thoughts with you. Sometimes we can connect through different ways. Some people connect in different ways. I want to share a poem that may connect with you that I sat down and penned this morning, entitled, It's Here. It's here. What is all the fuss? Didn't you pray? Have you lost your trust? It's here, and so is the season of spring. So tell it, I don't like what you bring. It's here with historic earthquakes, angry landfills, and nothing desirous, vicious and vile, spreading this coronavirus. It's here. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or face, waiting for that opportunity to erase your space. It's here. Gyms, bars, saloons, all locked tight. Bodies, throats, beauties, all on sacrifice. It's here. We can finally say it's a sign. Maybe yes, but nothing happens before God's time. Ladies and gentlemen, especially to Kim and Brock, I'd say to you, don't try to find out who it is. I know it's a small community, and we don't need people trying to snoop around, trying to find out who it is. What I'll say to you is limit your travel and stay at home. This thing is also suspected to be airborne. I would say to you, wear a mask if you have to go out on essential travel. Also, I want to say that tomorrow is Palm Sunday, and April 5th. Put a branch at your door in the spirit or at your window to celebrate Palm Sunday. I think you've probably seen a message going around. Also, the commissioner did a great job just now in explaining some of the questions that he had received, and in terms of swimming, during hard, soft, we know it's a bit confusing at times about hard or soft, but I'll come back to you tomorrow after further discussions with the team about swimming during soft time, soft curfew. I think there's a bit of confusion with that, and also a bit of confusion with shoreline fishing. So tomorrow we'll clarify if we come back for the press conference tomorrow. Also, I'm so pleased that the country has put most of politics aside and has come together as one in the fight against this coronavirus. I've never heard and seen as many people saying how proud they are to be Caymanian more than ever before. This must mean that what the government does here on a daily basis must be comforting and reassuring. Let's defeat this chapter in our history. I'm sure that you heard the report from the Premier as to the World Report, as to all the cases worldwide growing daily. What I can report to you on the bright side is that the public can be calm to know of China's 81,000 infected, that over 3,000 deaths, that 76,000 people also recovered. So just to give you a bit of that stat, I want to thank you for tuning in each day, actually, and being with us. As we learn through these uncertain times, we need you on this ship with us. And today I wanted to take a moment to mention a point I spoke to briefly yesterday regarding the phone calls and the stories that are rolling in regarding to layoffs. We understand as businesses you are looking to the foreseeable future, and in some cases this will mean the laying off of staff will be another major issue that many will have to contend with. I also mentioned that we have been hearing that some businesses have laid off Caymanians first and retained their work permit holders. Though it's only been a few short hours, and I cannot say that it is widespread, I still took some time to meditate and pray on this. We understand this may be a result of many things, letting go of non-essential staff versus keeping on key workers, but I also realize this may be a result of some business owners thinking this is better of the two evils, since Caymanians will receive more help, or receive assistance faster from the needs assessment unit or from their government. However, I want to remind the public, businesses in particular, the Premier has previously stated and continues to state that our government will assist all who are here in our islands, work permit holders, permanent resident, and Caymanians. While we all know these are trying and uncertain times, we cannot and should not discriminate, but we must also be realistic that if the situation rolls into a few more weeks, a few more months, as envisioned, there will come a time where the government's purse will be dwindling. The reality is that we need to support our own people, and we will require the support of businesses like we've seen with the Ritz-Carlton this week, being responsible and having difficult conversations with their staff and encouraging those who truthfully are out of jobs to return to their home countries. They have taken steps to offer some financial assistance through redundancy packages, etc., which again only highlights that this is a humanitarian effort and everyone is responsible to do the right thing, individuals and businesses. Please don't let me bring out the Merle Haggard and Toba Keat, the fighting side of me. There is no doubt that the Cayman Islands will once again need all kinds of talented people to rebuild after this passes. We were built on the backbone of many nationalities. We grew up with people from all over the world. I could name out many countries where my friends, teachers, doctors, and so many more have come from, but that would take up a lot of time. I want to also address the rumors of disunity. Cayman is small, and we have heard that people are having disagreements over who the government is helping, who they think we should help, and who shouldn't be helped. Once again, we commit to back the Premier's promise that no one will go without food or shelter. Cayman is made up of more than 130 nationalities. Please, we ask you to stay unified. We must work together. We cannot beat this unless we stand shoulder to shoulder with care and compassion for our own fellow men. But if we are unable to stay below the curve, we could find our own health services are not able to cope, and then we would see ourselves in dire situations like Italy and Spain, and then what? Should there ever come a time where hospitals are overwhelmed because people aren't listening and aren't complying with the new regulations, whether you like the regulations or not, then there will also come a time where we'll not be able to care for everyone. Tell me, would you like for your irresponsible behavior to have caused this? We must all cooperate in order to prevent a catastrophe. We need you to stay home as much as possible, to only go out for essentials. The longer we stay at home at a time, the quicker we can get back to be our own little utopia. Remember, we are staying at home to save lives. Staying at home is the new Caymankind. May the Lord bless you and keep you. My beloved Cayman Islands, may the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace during this time. God bless.
Thank you, Minister. Before we take some questions from the media, I think Dr. Lee has a little extra information he'd like to give us.
I'm just able to update you about the mental health helpline. It receives up to 10 calls a day with an average around a half that. The calls last between 5 and 15 minutes. The various trained counselors have access all the time to a psychiatrist should they need any backup help. There appears to be no problems with the follow-ups. Clearly, a lot of people are having concerns at this time. Some of them have lost their jobs as a result of the troubles and have needed to be referred on to the needs assessment unit in that regard.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think Cayman News Service had one more question for you. Wendy, go ahead for Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much. Can I just check with Dr. Lee again the health status of the people that have tested positive, and in particular the situation on Cayman Brac? Was that person tested because they had symptoms or because they were part of a contact chain?
Yes, I understand. They were tested because they had symptoms on Cayman Brac. I have no major update from yesterday's update, Wendy, from the health of the other people.
Okay, also, can you just clarify what the health minister just said about the virus being airborne? We understand that obviously the droplets can linger in the air and that the droplets can go perhaps further than we thought, but airborne is a very different and frightening thing to say. So I just wanted to clarify that that is incorrect and that you could, as the doctor, put that right. Thank you.
I think the issue is, again, one that's developing. We've seen that there is some evidence that is coming out that has said that in some circumstances there can be microdroplets there. There are other studies. There is a very well performed study that was done, I think, either in Singapore or in Hong Kong, where they specifically looked at air droplets in the air and they could find none. So the evidence is not entirely clear. I would not go one way or the other. Certainly, fresh air is a good news. So having fresh air to clear away anything that is in the air is good news. And keeping your distance, again, is good news. And if you can keep the density of people down, all of these things will protect you. But we've now said masks may offer you some protection, so there is no harm in wearing one. I have mine over there. I wore it into the office. You couldn't hear me if I put it on now. But I am, as people will know who saw me in Hurley's this morning, I'm wearing mine.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think a couple of the other questions we had from the media were the same as the point that Dr. Lee has just clarified. So I'll hand over to Donna, who I think has a question for some of the other members of the panel. Donna.
Hello, everyone, again. Actually, I had a suggestion for health services officials and the health minister. It concerns the 24-hour or the mental health hotline. A lot of people are going through mental issues right now, as Dr. Lee rightly said, and they're wondering whether that hotline can actually be open to 24 hours and maybe have phone calls forwarded to the volunteers' phone lines so that people can get that help when they need it and not just from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. My question, though, relates to something I'd like to ask our Premier about, and it relates to liquor stores. A lot of people, and I'm sure you keep hearing it yourself, Premier McLaughlin, are concerned about why liquor stores continue to be essential services in light of particularly a number of DUIs, people on the road being arrested for driving under the influence. If you could just go over it again for us, because I know the question has been asked many times before.
So let me start by saying this exercise is not one about making judgments about whether people should be allowed to drink or not drink. There are very strong views in this community, as there are in many other communities, that people ought not to be allowed to drink. I get loads of messages from many people for whom I have great respect. This is not an exercise in making judgments about what people, whether people should drink or not drink. I start there. If we close the liquor stores, I want people to think what is going to happen. We already know what is going to happen. We are already having to deal with speakeasies that are sprouting up around certain parts of Georgetown. because people are going to go in search of liquor. With the liquor stores, we are able to control people's access to it. Now, liquor stores, like every other store and business that is open in Cayman, will be subject to the division, the alphabetical division of the population in terms of when you can have access. So, depending on where your surname falls. I would say, and I think the commissioner will attest to this, that there are far less instances of people driving under the influence now than there was before this crisis came upon us and we shut down all of the bars. But we do not believe that it is sustainable for us to shut the liquor stores without there being very serious consequences. You think there's a run on the supermarkets when they believe we're going to shut them? Let us think what will happen if we try to do that with respect to liquor stores. Most people drink responsibly, myself included. I do not believe that we should take that step. People who are alcoholics or people who have issues with alcohol are going to behave a certain way regardless of what we do. We put in place curfew provisions. People still breach them, no matter what you do. So my point is that no matter how many rules you put in place, there are always going to be, hopefully, a small minority of people who do seek to breach them. But I promise that you and the whole community, we have given this a great deal of thought. We've looked at what happens in other places as well. In most Western countries, they don't have separate liquor stores. You can go to a supermarket and buy a six-pack of beer or a bottle of wine or whatever the case you want. Cayman, we're structured a little differently than some other places. But I don't know of anywhere, we did some research in it, where they actually ban the purchase and consumption of alcohol, even during this crisis.
Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. The other question relates to students returning to schools. Do we have any idea? A lot of parents are grappling with their kids being home, being homeschooled, and you know it's what's necessary during the crisis. But any better idea at this point when schools may reopen?
No, I don't. The reality is, every time we get a positive test, we reset the clock. And you push any possible reopening of schools that much further down the track. And so I find today's report very, very alarming, probably on the scale of when we got the first report in terms of my concern about what's happening, particularly with respect to Cayman Brac. So I would say to parents, Lord knows we all know how stressful it is, but believe you me, if we send the children back to school, we are going to, anytime soon, we're going to wind up with an absolute tragedy here. It's going to be a disaster of proportions that we can't even begin to conceive. Just look at what's happening around the rest of the world. I tell people all the time, if you wonder why we're doing this, just turn on your TV. Look at any of the news stations, and you'll understand why we are taking what has been described by some as draconian measures.
Just wanted to clarify something, Caroline, for Donna, in terms of the mental health, and it's a helpline, actually, not a hotline. Information received was that they always said that operation hours would depend on the need and would be reviewed on that basis. So far, they're seeing just 10 and doesn't see the sufficient need to run 24/7. But once this number goes up, then they're open to having it open for more hours per day. So far for this weekend, the persons that are manning, the nurse that is manning it, has only had one call so far and not related to any student.
Okay. Thank you, Minister Seymour.
Thank you, Donna. We'll head next to Radio Cayman and then to the Cayman Compass after that. So, Dion, your question, please.
Sure, I have two questions, one for Dr. Lee and one for the Commissioner. I will start with Dr. Lee. In the beginning, it was rumored that people of African ethnicity were not heavily affected by this coronavirus, and there are people out there who believe that. Can you shed some light on that situation to enhance the awareness to those who may think they're immune or believe this rumor is true?
All human, I'm afraid.
I am just sharing some comments from the panel. I don't know, I have not seen any data to that effect, so I would definitely caution people. I would say that everybody is equally at risk. I have not seen any information epidemiologically that backs up that statement.
So to the Commissioner, thank you, Dr. Lee. I know prisoners are being released early in other countries. Are prisoners being released from the Northwood prison? That's something that we're hearing.
I'm sorry, I've missed a question. I apologize.
Sure, no problem. Are prisoners being released early from the Northwood prison during the COVID-19?
Yes, so some prisoners have been released coming towards the end of sentence, and within prison regulations, there is a provision to allow those prisoners out early. A small number have been released.
Okay, do you have any, can you tell us why?
It's provided for under the regulations, and I think the primary concern there was to allow for this social distancing that was required in the prison. There was a threat assessment done between police and prison, and no risk to the community determined by the police and the prison in their assessment.
Are they being kept somewhere safe, away from the community, just for people who may be, scared of people who are not finished with their sentences being released?
All those persons that were released had to return to a permanent address, which is their primary homes, as I understand it, and no indication they were suffering from any COVID-19 symptoms.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thanks, Dion. Kayla at the Cayman Compass.
Hi, I have a question, kind of an overarching question directed at the Premier. I know a lot of foreign workers here are questioning what life will be like here in coming months, if it's worth the risk of staying, or if people should be trying to wrap it up and move on. Can you describe what you believe life will be like on this island over the next 6 months to a year?
It's going to be tough for everybody. As I've said before, I believe that if you are or have been employed in the hospitality industry, particularly with respect to the hotels, then you need to believe that it is going to be at least the end of the year before it is possible for that part of the industry to get back into any semblance of normalcy. Because even if we, as we are trying assiduously to do, contain the spread of the virus here, and that there is not the epidemic which plagues so many other countries, all around us, the virus continues to rage. And until we are at a point where we can either test who's coming here, that they've actually had the virus before, or that they don't have it, or some vaccination is found, or some cure that prevents the virus doesn't necessarily end tragically in many cases, as is currently the case, we are going to keep the borders closed. So if you're engaged in the hospitality industry, I would say the prospects of you getting back to work anytime soon are very slim. And if it becomes possible for you to make your way home, then you ought to be planning for that. We are ourselves, had a quick chat with the governor before we came in, keeping track of the numbers of people who are contacting the emergency travel line. And as soon as we have a better grasp of what the numbers are, we are going to do whatever we can to either get them to the UK or get them to the United States or somewhere else. The problem is that so many borders around the world are closed, so there's a limit to where we can actually fly anybody. But we're looking at that very carefully, because the last thing anybody needs, including the people who are unemployed, is to be in a place where they have no income and no ability to look after themselves. So yeah, we have very grim times ahead. As hard as people think it is now, it's going to get a lot harder.
I wanted to also ask for clarification on the closure of the CBC visa and extension counters. Will that in any way affect work permit renewals?
No, we've we've taken the approach that although this is going to require legislation, that we can do that retroactively. There will be no attempt to enforce or to prosecute or do anything to people with respect to their immigration status during this particular crisis. We are trying to figure out how we can actually have a meeting of the Legislative Assembly virtually, or with the requisite social distancing measures in place. We certainly can't do it. Certainly can't have all the members go down to the Legislative Assembly because the seats are just too close. The opportunities for to brush against people is just too great. So we're trying to figure out, as is the UK, how we can have a virtual meeting of the Legislative Assembly, because we do need to look at a number of pieces of legislation. I referred yesterday to the pensions law. The immigration law is another one, and there are probably some other pieces of legislation we need to deal with. We are able to deal with the curfew and all of the attendant measures that we're taking there, because we already have in place the necessary law, the public health law and the police law, which allow Cabinet to make regulations to deal with those. But to amend principal legislation requires a meeting of the House.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another kind of housekeeping question regarding extensions. We're getting a lot of questions about vehicle registration renewals and what happens in cases where a vehicle needs to be inspected. Would the renewal be, the registration on those vehicles be extended for the time being?
Yeah, that's another one of those troublesome things that we're looking at. It's okay if you don't need licensing. If you don't need an inspection, you can get a license online and so forth. But where there is a requirement, and I think it is that your current inspection has to go more than 3 months beyond the licensing requirement for that to be waived. But we're looking at what we can do about that as well, because otherwise a number of people are going to be driving around without properly licensed vehicles because they simply don't have the ability to actually have them inspected. So we're looking at that as well.
Okay, wonderful. I've also gotten a question from expectant parents, how to get their nurseries ready during this time and make sure, that they have a crib and bottles and all of those little things that you can't just pop out and buy at the shop at this time. What should people in that situation do?
I think that one is above my pay grade. Okay. But thank you. We'll take it on board, and perhaps we can have a response tomorrow or the next press briefing.
Okay, great. I have just one last question before I pass on the screen. And this is kind of a worst case scenario question that I imagine hazard management has already thought of, but we've already had a few instances this year that have required people to go to shelters, earthquake, fire, and hurricane season is fast approaching. How do we handle a situation where people might need to return to shelters and also manage that risk of spreading COVID?
Okay, we have the head of hazard management Cayman Islands here, Danny Coleman. So
great.
I'll ask her.
Good afternoon, Cayman. Thank you very much for that question, Kayla. We're working very closely with the private sector as well to identify buildings that might come in handy for that. So whilst we're looking at some of the medical facility backup being current shelters, we've obviously got a lot of research going on with both public and private sector. So I think we'll be covered for that. We're doing a lot of elevation mapping as well to make sure they're above storm surge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. I know we have another question from the Cayman News Service. So Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. This really just follows on from what the Premier was saying earlier about the travel issues. We keep getting an awful lot of requests from people about going to Miami. Can you just say, because obviously Cayman Airways could fly there, so is this an issue of the American airports not wanting to take a flight from the Cayman Islands at the moment? Can you just give us a reason why we can't sort of get that sorted?
Well, there's no reason why we can't get that sorted. As far as I know, the Americans have not indicated any reason why a flight couldn't come from Cayman. We just need to make sure we have the numbers of people to go to warrant the flight.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Wendy. I know Donna had a few more questions from members of the public today. Donna.
I do. The first one is farmers are concerned that they won't be able to feed their animals under the hard curfew. Can somebody address that really quick for me?
We've addressed that before. I think all farmers who would have written into curfew time would have gotten an exemption to allow them to carry out essential services or essential, I can't think of a better word than services, activities with respect to their cattle or their livestock generally. I mean, we're conscious, and I am deeply so, that you can't tell, your cattle or your goats that today's hard curfew day, so they should eat or they shouldn't have water. So we've had to deal with this with respect to the previous curfew, hard curfew we put in place for 2 days. So so farmers, and I know many of them have, because they've written to thank me and to thank Eric, have gotten those letters. So if there's anyone who still needs that exemption right to curfew time, we'll email them back their permission. But it's only for that specific purpose, not to go and conduct general work, fix your fence and all those sorts of things.
All right, thank you, Premier McLaughlin. Also, some test kits, it's reported out of the UK were contaminated, and there's some people who are concerned that we may be getting test kits from the UK because of that. Can someone address this for me?
Yeah, there's no risk of that happening. We're getting these test kits from the UK Crown agents, and there'll be full quality control of those. So that risk really does not apply in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If we have no more questions from the media, I'll ask if any of the panel have any closing thoughts for us today.
No, I know that people must be sick of hearing me saying this. I just want you all, as many of you as possible, to stay home and to stay away from other people. Don't let, I wouldn't even say strangers, don't let friends into your homes. It's a very hard thing to do, but now is not the time for socializing. Stick with your household that you're close to. Keep away from the supermarkets as much as you possibly can. Stay away from the banks as much as you possibly can, because those are the places where there are the most people, and those are the places where you are most likely to acquire the virus without even realizing that you've done so.
Thank you very much for joining us again this afternoon. Remember to check out gov.ky/coronavirus and all our social media channels for the latest information. Thanks very much. We'll see you again soon.
Oh, land of sun. I know many persons are tuning in right now hoping to see another episode of Double Six Pose. But as this is the final day and myself and many others are going to be in the isolation facility, we wanted to say thank you. Please enjoy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's Judith Crawford from room 212.
Big thank you to the isolation staff from room 522, Kayla Elliott.
Thank you to the isolation team from Andres McDermott in room 525.
Hi, isolation team. I can't thank you guys enough. Coming from room 312, Shakira Eva.
My name is Shamel Williams, and I'd like to say thank you to the isolation team from room 331.
To everybody in the isolation staff here at Comfort Suites, I really appreciate everything you have done for us in the past 2 weeks. And I just want to say a big, big thank you and much love from Torian Shields in 49.
Thank you from Chelsea Frederick in room 430.
Thank you to the isolation team from Dominique in room 308.
I would like to sincerely thank the isolation team here at the Comfort Suites for making us feel so at home for the last 2 weeks. I'm room 324, Martina Bodden.
Hey isolation team, Jacretia from 521. Just wanted to thank you for all the work you've put in these past 14 days. Thank all of you guys.
Just wanted to say a big thank you to the isolation team from room 224, Jessica Holston.
I would just like to say a big thank you to the isolation team. This is Joel Gale, room 313.
I'm Renee from room 404, and I would like to say to the staff who have been taking care of us in isolation, thank you very much. Your work has been appreciated.
Thank you from Jeffy with the Belly, room 416. Yo, you're forgetting to thank the government and everybody who helped us. Just give me a minute now, brother. Watch out, now you gonna go vex me.